There are always many strange phenomena happening in nature, which are beyond people's cognition. So when faced with these mysterious events, people are both panicked and curious. Naga fireballs are glowing blobs that allegedly arise naturally from the Mekong River and then ascend high into the air. The phenomenon occurs during the moon night, with the light display lasting several minutes. Witnesses described the Naga fireballs as reddish blazing balls of light, which range in size from tiny bubbles to basketball-sized orbs. They can shoot up from the water as high as 600 feet, 183 meters, before disappearing. They usually appear from mid or late October to early November. Residents believe the fireballs are formed by the breath of a giant sea serpent called Phi Naga or Naga. Legend has it that Naga lives in the riverbed and wakes up to observe the end of the Buddhist Lent. Nagas are shapeshifters described in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. According to Thai folklore, these semi-divine creatures can take up any shape they prefer, whether it is a divine, human form, full serpent, or half-serpent, half-human form. The exact cause of this phenomenon remains unknown, although several theories are trying to explain this peculiar event. One of the scientific explanations suggests that these fireballs are produced by swamp gas from the underground decomposition of organic materials. When methane finds its way out to the surface, it reacts spontaneously with oxygen-rich air, producing a flaming gaseous bubble as it ignites. A similar theory explains that the Naga fireballs are flammable phosphine gas released by the river's boggy environment. Other scientists believe the fireballs could be plasma orbs formed when the surface electricity is discharged into the river's water, but they can also not fully explain this phenomenon because igniting this type of orbs requires an enormous amount of voltage, which is impossible in the Mekong River. Recently, some people also said that this was the red flame emitted by a signal gun, but local villagers said that the flame emitted by the signal gun was inconsistent with the flame they saw. Assam's Jatinga village has been the site of a bizarre and mysterious phenomenon known as mass bird suicide. This phenomenon has puzzled both scientists and locals, and is most commonly observed during the last months of September to November, when the area experiences intense rainfall and cloudy skies. The strange phenomenon of mass bird suicide occurs specifically on a 1.5-kilometer patch of the ridge where Jatinga village is situated. This ridge is surrounded by the lofty Borel Mountains, contributing to the mystery of the area. The birds typically exhibit this unusual behavior during night, especially on no-moon nights, when there is no moonlight. On these nights, the birds commit suicide between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., creating the perfect conditions for the phenomenon to unfold. During the mass bird suicide, the birds in the vicinity of Jatinga village exhibit disoriented and erratic behavior. They become visibly confused, often flying erratically and incoherently. Thus, the birds tend to fly towards artificial light sources. These light sources can include streetlights, bonfires, and the lights from the village itself. The birds seem to be attracted to the lights, which ultimately leads them to their demise as they crash into buildings and trees near the light sources. Various species of birds commit suicide in this Jatinga village. Some of the commonly observed species include the tiger bittern, little egret, black bittern, pond heron, Indian pitta, and kingfishers. However, the long-distance migratory birds don't seem to be affected by this phenomenon. The Jatinga village and its eerie nights continue to attract the curious and the mystified, reminding us of the profound mysteries that nature holds. Many studies propose that the surge in bird deaths during September to November is attributed to the flooding of water bodies in Assam, disrupting the birds' natural habitat. As their nests break down, migration becomes a necessity, and Jatinga falls along their migratory path. Theories suggest that a combination of high altitude, winds, and fog leads to bird disorientation, with the lights of nearby villages serving as a stabilizing attraction. Another theory suggests that the area's climate induces a change in the magnetic qualities of underground water, contributing to the bewildered state of the birds. One possible explanation for this mysterious phenomenon is the use of high-power searchlights on hilltops, attracting birds flying at that time. Birds, lured by the lights, descend onto bamboo poles, resulting in fatalities. However, not all long-distance migratory birds are affected by this occurrence. Local superstitions once attributed the mysterious bird suicides to evil spirits, but efforts by ornithologists and conservationists have been successful in dispelling these beliefs. This transformation has allowed villagers to shift from considering the bird's arrival as a result of evil spirits to viewing it as a gift of gods. The Crooked Forest is a grove of 400 oddly shaped pine trees located near the town of Gryfino, West Pomerania in Poland. The pine trees were planted around 1930, when its location was still within the German province of Pomerania. From the base, the pine trees grow with a 90-degree sharp bend northward, but then curve back to grow straight up into the sky. Despite the unnatural curves bending 3 to 9 feet sideways at their bases, these trees are generally healthy and grow up to 50 feet tall. There are many theories on the mystery, although there is little to no evidence to support any of them. Some hypothesize that a unique gravitational pull in this particular area caused the trees to grow curved northwards, but this theory does not hold up to basic scientific scrutiny given that gravity pulls things downward and not at a curve. Others guess that the heavy snowfall in the area weighed down the trees as they were sprouting, causing them to grow crookedly at the base. But this theory does not explain why other groups of pine trees and assorted vegetation in the same area were not affected. Some suspect that the trees were grown for the rims of wooden cartwheels, as the grain direction would have produced very tough wheels. The most widespread and most likely explanation is that local farmers planted and manipulated the trees when they planted them in 1930, but it is estimated that the trees were 7 to 10 years old when they experienced the force that resulted in trunk curvature. Were the trees intentionally altered local farmers? Did the trees naturally bend northwards? Many people have been trying to find an answer to this mystery. But since the town of Gryfino was largely abandoned between the early stages of World War II until the 1970s, the people who were there before the war and probably had the answer to the mystery of the Crooked Forest are now likely gone forever. Red tides are caused by algae, which are tiny, microscopic organisms that grow in the water. Almost all bodies of water have some algae, but in a red tide, there is a lot more algae in the water than usual. In fact, the water changes color in a red tide because the population of algae living in the water becomes so dense. Red tides have been around since long before humans. However, certain human activities are making them more frequent. Chemicals from farming, factories, sewage treatment plants, and other sources can become dissolved in water on the land. This water, called runoff, eventually flows into the ocean and can cause algae to grow faster, leading to red tides. Red tides are sometimes also called harmful algal blooms. Some of the algae that causes a red tide produce powerful toxins, which are harmful chemicals that can kill fish, shellfish, mammals, and birds. If people eat fish or shellfish that have been in the water with toxic algae, they will also ingest the toxins, which can make them sick. Many regions restrict fishing during a red tide for this reason. Nearby restaurants take local fish and shellfish off the menu too. Other types of harmful algal blooms are caused by non-toxic algae species that still make trouble. For example, when giant masses of algae bloom, they eventually die and start to decompose. As they decay, the oxygen levels in the water begin to decrease. The water can become so low in oxygen that animals in the water either swim away to healthier waters or die off. During a red tide, beaches are sometimes covered in dead fish and other animals that either ingested toxins or couldn't get enough oxygen. When sea ice develops in the Arctic and Antarctic, impurities, like salt, are forced out, which is why ice created from seawater isn't as salty as the water from which it's formed. As this salty water leaks from the sea ice, the surrounding water becomes more saline, lowering its freezing temperature and increasing its density. This prevents the water from freezing to the ice and causes it to sink. As this cold brine reaches warmer seawater below, the water freezes around it, creating the descending tube of ice known as a brinacle. When this sea stalactite reaches the seabed, a web of ice forms and spreads across it, freezing everything it touches, including any sea life it encounters, such as starfish and sea urchins, which is how brinicles earn themselves a reputation as icicles of death.